Have any question? Yes, you have right. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. On behalf of the Bentonville Islamic Center, we welcome Dr. Ma'an al-Qudah. He's a alim and a scholar, especially in Islamic economy, and he is a permanent member of the Fatwa Committee of AMJA, the Assembly of Muslim Jurists. Inshallah. I guess, Brother Riyad, already you have some questions, so you can start with your questions. Brother Riyad, inshallah. Then from there we move, inshallah, to something different, inshallah, to the audience, your questions. Bismillah.
These are some of the pre-discussed questions.
Bismillah.
Okay. Yeah, wait for the kids' questions today.
Because
Because we have only 30 minutes, inshallah.
Yeah.
So the
Sure.
first question is about how should we calculate zakah for 401k, 529 educational plan, IRA accounts?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ثم أما بعد. When it comes to any kind of investment in the stock market, before I talk about the zakah, let's just focus on the fact that it's really hard to find 529 a Sharia compliant one. Because 529 actually does have to have bonds. So just for your information, 529 is not a Sharia compliant option to start with. Now let's put aside the Sharia compliance issue. Any kind of investment in the stock market, there is a very simple concept that we need to take into consideration. Whatever accessible or withdrawable is zakatable. Whatever accessible is zakatable. So if you're talking about IRA, individual retirement account, that's a kind of investment that has nothing to do with your employment, with your employer, with your profession. That's your personal, choice. You are the one who opened the IRA, and it is accessible in full. How to calculate zakah on it? You just go with the 100% amount. Let's say that you have $10,000, and then you do the math. How much deduction you will be experiencing if you proceed, right? You will be taxed, and you will be charged processing fees and administration fees and so on and so forth. So you do the math. The net amount, the take home amount, is the zakatable one based on 2.5%. Applying the same rule, 401k or any kind of employer-based retirement account is not accessible in full, right? If you file for a humanitarian case or for like hardship, you might get an access to up to 50% of the account. Let's say you have $500,000 and your investment company gave you access to up to 50% of your account, right? So 250, you have $500,000. You have $500,000. So the accessible amount is 50%, which is 250 in our example. If you decide to proceed, you will be sometimes penalized. You will be charged tax, processing fees, penalty, whatever. Do the math and find out how much is the net amount, like the take-home amount. Okay, 250 is the accessible amount. Let's say that all the deductions are around $50,000. You pay zakah on $200,000 based on 2.5% zakat rate, and this is actually regardless whether or not you want to proceed with withdrawing the money. It's just like a theoretical calculation to find out the zakatability of the account that you have. Down the road, every single year, you have to do the same exercise. How much you have in your 401k, how much is the accessible amount, how much is the total charges, penalty, tax, whatever. Net amount actually is the zakatable one based on 2.5%. This brings to our attention another very relevant issue, that if you do have bonds, for example, which is an interest-bearing loan, right? And you already generated interest, you have to dispose that interest. How about when the bond actually is mature? Okay, you have a bond of $5,000. Within 2 or 3 years, you received it back $6,000, right? You get rid of 1,000, you dispose 1,000, and upon the maturity of the bond, you have to pay zakah on the principal itself, which is 5,000. So the fact that investment was not a halal one does not negate the fact that you still have to pay zakah on the principal amount, which is 5,000 in our example.
I have a quick follow-up question to that. So on the 401k, you are allowed to borrow against it rather than pulling out from the like so they charge fees. So they usually charge you interest for that loan amount, but they charge that interest back to you, so you're paying yourself, right? How does that work? Is that allowed?
It works perfectly fine because basically there is no loan to worry about or to start with.
Correct.
It is called borrowing from your 401k, but in reality, that money, whether your contribution or the match of your employer, whatever set in your account actually is your money. So you are taken from your money, right? Okay, they call it borrowing. It's a legal like tax reduction technique because if you withdraw, that money is taxable. Is that correct? But if you borrow, it's tax advantage. So you borrow money, and as you said, you will be charged interest, and that interest actually will be going back to your account. So from a fiqh perspective, to start with, there is no loan, right? You are just taken from your money. Whatever is called loan is not a loan. Whatever is called interest, actually, it is not because you are not borrowing to start with.
So can you clarify one other thing? So like, my company puts money into my 401k, but they have a rule that I cannot take it out, especially their portion until I'm ready to retire. So do I need to pay zakat on that, even though it is not technically my money until it's matured or I'm ready to retire?
Well,
Just my portion of
yeah, whatever actually, whatever deposited in your account is your money. Now, the fact that this is the restricted amount, untouchable amount, does not negate the other fact that this is your money, right? So it is your money, but you do not have an access to it. And that's why from the beginning I said you go with the withdrawable amount. If you just for discussion purposes, if you apply for hardship, how much you will be getting percentage-wise from your account? 50%, right? You do have $100,000 straight worth of investment. The accessible amount is how much? 50,000. Now, if you decide to proceed, how much you have to pay? Let's say $10,000 between tax, between penalty, between processing fees. Net amount is how much? 40,000. 40,000 actually is a zakatable one based on 2.5% zakat. As simple as it.
Can you give him the mic?
So the second pre-submitted question is there zakah on a second real estate property I own? It is either a land or a rental or commercial property. If it is zakatable, how do I calculate zakat on the second or third real estate property I have?
Any real estate property that you have, if it is not a residential property, like your primary residence, the house that you live in, we need to ask a question: why you have a second house to start with? Is it here in the U.S. or abroad, maybe like back home whenever you go vacation? Now, if that property is for rent, then you have to consider paying zakah on the lease revenue. How much money you generated from that rental property, that is the zakatable part of this business, right? If that house stayed like, vacant, non-occupied, non-rented, then there is no zakah. There is no zakah. If that second house is purchased for business purposes, like you purchase that house and it is active in the market, right? You purchase a house, you wait for a few months until you do remodeling and maintenance, and then you put it in the market again. Then technically speaking, this is urudu tijara. I mean, this is a commodity for sale. So if 1 year already passed from the time that you purchased that house and it is active in the market, you need to find out how much is the market value. Like if you are to sell that house, you're asking for, right? That amount actually is the zakatable one based on 2.5%. What's the difference between this scenario and the previous one? This scenario actually makes the house as urudu tijara. It's a commodity, it's a merchandise, something for sale, right? But in the first scenario, the house actually is not for sale. In a technical term, we call it exploited assets, like a property that you hold, you utilize to generate money out of it, but the property itself is not for sale. Like someone has a Uber service or a taxi cab. Okay, that vehicle might be 60, 70,000 dollars like worth of money, right? But the car itself is not for sale, and that's why it's not zakatable. You pay zakat on the money that you generate out of providing the transportation service. طيب, let me give you the third scenario. If that house, I forgot, I'm sorry. If that house is none of the above, it's not for sale, it's not active in the market, it's not for rent, it's completely just like locked for you whenever you go vacation, like 1-2 weeks, whenever you go there, you just open it, you use that house. If that is the case, then actually this is zakat exempt. You don't have to pay zakat. You don't have to pay zakat.
So, if I have a land back home and I have not made up my mind, should I sell it or will I use it after retirement? I don't know. I just have a piece of land there lying. So in that case, zakat should be paid on that or not.
As long as you are undecided, then it's not for sale. I would assume it's not active in the market for sale. You need to make your mind up as soon as possible, because that piece of land actually has a value, and you have to make your mind. Is it for your personal use, like you are holding it maybe to build a house in the near future? Okay, if that is the case, then it is zakat exempt. You purchase that land for long-term investment purposes. Long-term means that you are positive it's not for sale, like upon purchasing it. Your plan was just to hold it 10, 15, 20 years until your kids grow up and they go to colleges. That was the plan. Okay. In this case, as long as the land is not active in the market for sale, then actually it's not zakatable. It is not. You just like keep it on hold. If you change your mind, and you put it active in the market for sale, you count 1 year, okay, on the lunar calendar. After the passage of 1 year, you pay zakat, because again it became urud tijara, it became property for sale, like a commodity or merchandise, like any goods, any merchandise in the grocery store, for sale. Thus, it is zakatable. No.
I have a follow-up question, sir.
Yes, sir.
On the second scenario where you mentioned that, if you have these rental income, do you have to take any rental expenses, for example, like a mortgage, you have to pay mortgage on that second house as well, It's still not your house, and then you have a management fee as well. Do you need to take those two deductions before get to the final number?
If the rental property does not have a clear title, you still have mortgage on it, you still have lien on it. This actually does not mean that you do not own that property. Well, it is your property, but you owe the mortgage company or the financier or the landlord a certain amount. So there is difference between legal ownership and indebtedness, right? You owe him a certain amount of money, but actually the house is used. The house is used. This is one thing. The other thing, how to calculate zakah? Well, we have to know here that the zakah is paid on the remaining income, not on the total income. Okay. Let's say, for example, just to keep it simple, that this is the only source of income that you have. You don't have any job, you don't have any other source of income. You have like one property for rent, and you rent it for $3,000 a month. Supposedly on papers, how much you should have after 1 year? 3 times 12, 36. But in the real life, okay, you receive that money like the lease revenue. Sometimes you spend it, to maintain the property, like a maintenance, and sometimes you take from it to pay property tax and to pay insurance. And sometimes the tenant is giving you a hard time, not paying you on time. Sometimes you take from that money to spend on yourself. Okay, what if in the zakat due date you ended up having $0 or maybe like 1,000 out of $36,000? Do you have to pay zakat? You don't have to. because the remaining income did not reach a nisab, which is the threshold. Nowadays, the nisab, by the way, is around $5,000. So if you do have 5,000 net solid amount, after all deductions, you have to pay zakat. But if you spend that money, in our example, $36,000 throughout the whole year long, and you ended up having way less than the nisab, 5,000, then there is no money to worry about. Thus, you are zakat exempt for this year, providing that you do not have any other source of income. If you do have, that's a completely different discussion.
So if you do, like, we, for example, like, you know, like, I have job over here, and then I have the rental property back in Virginia, in my case. When I do the taxes, you know, I have to show that one.
Okay, there is a virtual pool of money for zakat calculation purposes. You have a job, you receive a paycheck periodically, 2 weeks or once a month, and you do have some investment in the stock market. Could be IRAs, could be 529, could be 401k, and you do have a rental property overseas or maybe in a different state. Okay, all these different sources of money and income belong to you. You have your own like status or your own accountability in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you as an individual responsible for all these properties. That's why you need to add everything up to that virtual pool of money and to find out how much is the gross and how much deductions that you have, you put them aside, right? And how much is the net amount. If the net amount that's coming from your salary, coming from the rental property in Virginia, coming from the investment that you have in the stock market, is it still 5,000 or more? Okay, so we should not like separate. Do we have 5,000 from the stock market? 5,000? No, because all these different sources belong to you. Yeah, exactly. To one person. So if the net amount after all deductions is still $5,000 or more, then you have to pay zakat. Clear?
So
You want to use the mic?
Sahel, can you give him the mic? Sahel, can you help us? Or Harun? Salam.
My question is on mortgage. The Islamic mortgage, how does Islamic mortgage system different from the general mortgage? I mean, house mortgage to get new building. How does Islamic mortgage operation different from the general mortgage?
That's completely different subject. But briefly, the traditional mortgage, the interest-bearing one, depends on what is called the risk shifting mode of finance, where you take money from the bank, right, as a loan, and the bank is not taking any liability, any responsibility, any risk in that investment or that process. So you borrow $500,000 from Bank of America or from Chase, and you pay it back $700,000, $800,000 within the next 20 or 30 years. Okay, any kind of appreciation, any kind of depreciation, any kind of eminent domain, natural disaster, foreclosure, whatever happened to the property, the bank is not responsible. The bank is just looking for like easy profit, right? This is the traditional / haram riba based one. The Islamic one actually is based on risk sharing mode of finance and not risk shifting. In a sense that if you're gonna go with the ideal situation, the Islamic mortgage company has to purchase the property jointly with you, right? So you buy 5%, they buy 95%, and then you sign declining partnership agreement with them where you rent their share, and throughout the whole 20, 30 years agreement long, they have to be proportionally responsible for the maintenance, for the tax, for the insurance. And if you decide to quit or like terminate the agreement and you put that house in the market, if there is any appreciation, like increase in the value, you share that increase with the mortgage company. There is a depreciation, they have to share the loss with you. So it's all about risk sharing as opposed to risk shifting. Unfortunately, in the real life, the genuine sound Islamic finance practice is not implemented properly. There is a lot of like tricks, okay, and different ways to like manipulate and to go around like circumvent the rules, to make the Islamic finance very, very similar, not even identical to the non-Islamic one. But let's draw a line between the theory and the practice. The theory is excellent, the practice actually is otherwise. It's like the difference between Islam and Muslims. Islam is excellent, Muslims are otherwise.
Sheikh, the next question is about the community members donating to a masjid their zakat money. And are there any rules on how fast we need to distribute it? Is it within a year, or it can stay with the administration finding for the right people? Can it take more time? And what are the best practices around this particular scenario?
If you have a lot of money in your zakat account, just give it to Guidance College. I'll be more than happy. About that. طيب أخي, the default rule, the asl, is that zakah is to be managed annually. So you as a zakah payer, you pay it on an annual basis, right? So the community at large and the zakah recipients are expected to receive their share on an annual basis. Now, this is one thing. The other thing, the masjid actually is the intermediator, is the third party that represents the zakah payers and represents the zakah recipients at the same time. So you are العاملون عليها إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها.